All right, let's finish up with chapter 14, I think is what it is. We're talking about managing risk, safety, security, and legal aspects. So what I'll do here is go ahead and share screen again in just a second. I'll do it now, actually. Okay. All right, so we'll go back. I usually, what I try to do is go back at least one slide to where we were talking on the last class when we don't finish something up. Now, because I know at the last slide, y'all are always putting your stuff away and, you know, thinking about what you're going to do when you get out of here. So I at least go back. Looky there. Good morning. How you doing this morning?
I'm struggling. Bad.
You rode the struggle bus to class today.
All morning.
Okay, well, hopefully your day will get better. Good to see you here. We are back. We're going to finish up chapter 14. So that's where we are at this point. And we're talking about, you know, this chapter is all about risk, safety issues, legal aspects. So we have to, as a manager, as a leader, we have to protect ourselves, our employees, the people who are under us, and our, you know, facility and the place we work from, you know, opening ourselves up to litigation by things that can be prevented. So that's kind of the key in this whole chapter. So when you're talking about this particular slide, where we implement and report on plans, we need to preach to our staff that everyone's a safety officer, which basically, you know, that's not a formal title. We're just saying, hey, if you see something that could be a danger to someone, I need y'all to let us know where we can get it fixed. You know, if you go in the bathroom and there's a door on one of the stalls that's about to fall off the hinges, just come and let us know. We'll get that to maintenance, or we'll fix it ourselves, and we'll get that, because if someone comes in, that door falls on their kid who's peeking under the stall at them, you know, something that we could have prevented. So everyone's a safety officer in regards to the fact that if you see something that's dangerous, as far as a physical item, or even if you, in your daily activities, if you think that something that we're doing, if you see somebody repetitively falling while doing a certain activity, or, you know, like, if you think we can make something safer, let us know. You know, you want to make sure the communication lines are open as far as that. So the managers and the staff are going to, because of this, you're going to review your practices and documents and revise your strategies. So that's where, when the communication lines are open, they have, you make sure that your subordinates feel free and willing to share with you ideas that can improve what you're doing and make it safer, get better strategies moving forward. So when you have things that you're doing to ensure safety, that needs to be documented and reported. A good example of this, when I was the city pool director here in Oxford, I had to report to safety officers what I did with my chemicals for the pool, because pool chemicals are pretty rough stuff. You can make like mustard gas out of what you have to run a pool. So, you know, they asked me exactly which chemicals do you have? I have to list that. Where do you store them? What's the environment of the area where you store these chemicals? They ask, you know, they tell me the things that could happen. But anyway, all this stuff is documented and reported as to, this is how we are mitigating the chance of me opening a door and having a mustard gas explosion in my face. You know, we have protocol set for when we're adding chlorine to the pool. You know, a big splash of chlorine in your eyes is going to be detrimental, obviously. What do we do when we're adding chlorine to the pool? You know, we had a checklist of safety protocol that was there for me, for my managers who worked under me that may be doing the same thing. And that basically, that covers the business, the park commission at that point, by saying, this is how you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to have on gloves, which are provided, you know, that we had these thick rubber gloves that went up to your elbow. We had goggles and we had a respirator mask that you were supposed to wear when you were handling the chlorine. Now, if an employee chooses not to follow this protocol, can you, and you're not there, was there anything you can do about it? No. But did you have the documentation in place of what they were supposed to do, and documentation that they were aware of, this is what you're supposed to do? That's what you have to be sure. You're covering yourself. You're also setting your employees up to not be injured or not be hurt by putting those things in place. You know, you're not doing it just to cover yourself. You're trying to keep people safe. You know, we also have an eye wash station over here on this wall in case there is an accident. You know, this is the number you call if there's a problem. Things like that are all put into place. So let me make sure that didn't skip anything. No. Security and personal safety. So it's become more and more of an issue through the years. There used to be random situations where you would have, you know, a work site shooting or something like that years ago, but it's much more common these days now that the world has gotten crazier and crazier. So you have to think a lot more about safety in general and personal safety in our workplaces. And that really has grown. You know, there was a time, back to the pool again, when I was over the city pool, and I don't know if any of you guys have ever been there before, there are several gates where you can get in and out to there, but they're always locked during service hours. You don't want people having access to come in and out from a bunch of different ways. So, long story short, the pool is a one-way in. You go through the window, pay your money to get into the pool, and then you're in. Opens up to the pool and all the chairs and everything that's involved, and one way out. You come in and out of this little bitty bottleneck. So, long story short, I mean, I had this nightmare. You know, what if we had a situation where, you know, even if it's just a pool patron that was mad at another pool patron, because it happened. We had fights in there in the pool sometimes, you know, things like that. What if they were mad enough that they came into the pool with a gun? What do you do? You know, one entrance, one outrance, as they say. You know, we thought about, I talked to my managers about unlocking the gates and trying to usher people out if something started going down like that. So that's just a contemporary thing, something that we wouldn't have had to think about years ago. It just wasn't an issue. Now you have to think about things like that and make plans. So healthcare workers and the people that are served can experience numerous threats to their safety. And what I think of there, a lot of the things that are finishing up this chapter remind me of coronavirus and COVID. You know, that's a situation where a healthcare worker can be, you know, exposed to something that could be dangerous for them. So that's why we have to provide PPEs to people that are going to be going in, you know, working with patients who may be spreading something at this point. Yeah, that's just a good example of that. So as the managers, we have to oversee safety plans that outline situational issues, personnel responsibilities such as, emergency preparedness plans. What do we do in this case? That's what is each personnel responsible for as far as ensuring safety? What security equipment do we need? What safety equipment do we need? It's not listed here. And what are the communication processes that we take to handle emergencies? So you've got to have plans in place, and we did. Back to the pool again. That's a good place to use for an example for this sort of thing, because there's a lot of risk there. There's a lot of potential for someone getting hurt, things like that. We had a plan for inclement weather. If we heard thunder or if we saw lightning, what did we do? If we had someone throw up in the pool, what did we do? It's not an emergency, but we had to do, a process, and we had it written down. We knew what to do every time. If someone had if we had to make a save, if one of my lifeguards had to make a save, what was the protocol? If we had an actual drowning situation or near drowning situation, what is the protocol? What's the protocol if we have a spinal injury or apparent spinal injury? Those are the kind of things that we have to have plans, emergency plans that are not only written out, they have to be shared with the employees, they have to be practiced with the employees, they have to be posted, they have to be something that people, if something happens and you have to jump into action, that people are going to be comfortable doing. That's our responsibility as a manager, is sharing that information and making sure that our employees are going to be comfortable in a situation that they have to deal with a spinal injury. I mean, comfortable is kind of an odd word for that, because nobody's going to be comfortable if you think someone has just broken their neck in your pool. But let's go with the word confident. Hopefully they'll be confident in dealing with that situation because you have prepared them and drilled with them. This is what we do when this happens. You're going to call 911. You're going to grab the spine board. You're going to clear the pool. Everyone has responsibilities. So again, this odd situation where the authors of this book, we talked about, they have this thing about Canada and the US. So here we are, they're talking about, and we did talk about this stuff, I remember now. We talked about OSHA being our main watchdog kind of for safety issues in the US. In Canada, it's the Canadian Health Act. We've got, again, this is in CDC. We hear that a lot right now. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. That's federal organizations where we can find security and safety resources. What are people looking up on the CDC right now? Coronavirus, what do we do? What's the current guidelines? What do you suggest as far as masks? Have you changed today from yesterday? Because they have some during the whole process. I've seen things where they said masks are great. I've seen things where they said wearing masks is not great. That it shows no benefit. This is all just nuts. As far as quality organizations, Institute for Healthcare Improvement in the US, Canadian Healthcare Association in Canada. Again, this will be a good slide that you may have to refer to for like test questions. I'm not going to have you memorize this stuff right here. Now you do need to know what OSHA is, Occupational Safety and Health Act. That's all about, when you think about somebody leaning a ladder against another ladder over making a V out of two ladders to get to a light in the top of a stairwell, that's that's people say, oh, that's the OSHA violation right there. It's because you're clearly not following safety protocols. That's what OSHA is about, and we need to know what CDC is all about. So in legal jargon, the thing to kind of remember here is that know what a tort is. A tort is an offense to an individual. It can be a wrong against reputation or the property of another. It can be intentional or unintentional. This is just a legal term. They use the word tort. If someone is going to file, a legal claim, then they have to prove negligence on the part of someone. So what we need to do as managers is make sure that our people are not negligent, and that we are not negligent in providing training and materials needed to keep our people safe and our people that we serve safe. So if someone is going to come after us for negligence, duty was owed. We didn't do something that we were supposed to do. Duty was breached. Kind of the same thing. We stopped doing something probably that we were supposed to do a certain way, or we started cheating on the way we were doing it. Proximate cause, injury, damage, or loss resulted. There's the main thing that's going to set it off. If someone is injured, damaged, or they have loss to personal property, that's where you're going to see legal liability come in to play. Two big words here that we've all heard of: negligence. What it basically, it is an unintentional tort where simply it's the omission of what a reasonable, prudent person would do under similar circumstances. You're not doing what someone should do, obviously, like keeping a vulnerable adult in a warm enough environment. You just let them sit outside in the cold until they get hypothermic because they like to sit outside. We have a duty to them to keep them safe, thus making sure that they're either dressed appropriately to stay warm or get them to come inside. We can't just let them sit out in the cold. That would be negligence. Not feeding someone when they were due to have a meal, negligence. I mean, if you're in a facility that takes care of that side of things and you're not doing it, that's clear negligence, and you would be in line for, legal issues. Another thing that goes under negligence is doing something a reasonable, prudent person would not do. That is, totally negligent in what we're doing. I don't know another word to use for it, but you understand where I'm coming from. Malpractice, professional malpractice is unintentional tort. Again, that's the failure of a person who has professional training to act in a reasonable and prudent manner. Malpractice is going to be directed towards someone who is professionally trained, like someone who has certification, who has had training in a certain field. If they're clearly not doing something that they've been trained to do, that's malpractice. You're practicing against everything you've learned, basically. Professionals are held to higher expectations due to their specialized education and training. So, more likely to fall under malpractice in a professional position, more likely to probably fall under negligence if you're not in a specialized position per se. So like a CTRS would be more likely to deal with a malpractice suit, whereas just an activity therapist in a TR setting would be more likely to be a negligence situation, even if it was the same omission of what is being offered, the same problem. So there's standard of care is something else that's talked about. Obviously, when we provide services to people in a recreation therapy setting, we have a certain standard of care that's expected for us to provide them, not just by the clients that we serve, but by their families, by the state, by the city that we work at, and by the facility that we work for. There's a standard of care that's expected that we should be giving to our people. So we owe that to them, the duty of care that a reasonable, prudent person would do or not do in similar circumstances. Again, this is kind of common sense type things. You know, you're talking about a prudent person. That means somebody who has a little bit of sense. It's basically what a prudent person comes down to, and to put it in layman's terms. If you're doing something that is totally outside of the scope of that, then you're clearly being negligent, or you're clearly doing something that could be considered malpractice. A lot of this stuff, you know, we've talked about the ATRA Code of Ethics along the way in my classes too, and you know how we have fidelity and non-malfeasance and beneficence, where we try to benefit our clients. We don't do things that are going to hurt them. You know, things like that. It all fits all together when you look at that. If you follow that code of ethics and you follow your training, then you're not going to run into any of these situations. And as a manager, you make sure that your staff know the protocols, and you make sure that they're following those when they're working with the clients, and then no issues, no problems. I've worked in the field for years and years and years, and never seen a recreation therapy malpractice, negligence claim. For one, we're the buddies of everybody that we work with, because we're the fun ones. You know, they want to come see us. If we have somebody get hurt during one of our activities, that's going to happen periodically. Just because somebody, it's like I said, I thought I was going to be smart guy and do slip and slide instead of pool. You know, I had someone break a bone, or two people break a bone doing that activity. It was well intentioned. I ran it through the proper channels. Through running the activity, we learned that that was something that we couldn't do because of our population. Everybody loved the idea all the way to the top, but we learned pretty quick that that's not something that we wanted to do. We weren't faced with any sort of negligence, malpractice, anything like that, because it was all well intentioned and documented what we were doing and all of that. So certain people are judged by different standards as far as the law goes and as far as responsibility goes. And what that goes by, you have certain standards that represent the skill defined by the profession as the minimal acceptable level of care. And you've got certification and licensure. They're both, you know, pretty much on the similar level. Some states you have to have licensure to practice as a CTRS. Some states you only need certification. I'd say most states are just certification. There are some who require licensure. Something else that's looked at as far as litigation, which is what mostly what this chapter is about. You're also looking to see, you know, do they have certification, licensure? What was their academic preparation coming into this? How educated is this person? What should we expect from them as a prudent person who has an education? Experiential training. How long have they been in the job? What sort of training did they have? Did the person that gave them their training do a good job? You know, therefore, if you're looking for who has the responsibility for an issue, it could be the person who trained someone incorrectly, even though they're not the person who's there when an issue occurs. And then I just talked about code of ethics. That's something that we need to follow. And if it's not followed, obviously that's the core of what therapeutic recreation services are based on. If you follow the code of ethics, you're going to be all good. Basically, if you follow that code, you're not going to run into issues. So concerns as a manager, you're worried about consumer rights. You want to make sure that we're giving our consumers the rights that they deserve. We don't want to have a situation where there's an invasion of privacy. Not only does that go towards our people that we serve, it could even be towards our own, when people are coming in for interviews, there's certain questions, you know, if you guys remember from that portion, certain things that we can't ask. You know, you see that on forms a lot of times now where you're filling out like an internet form. You have the option of choose not to say on certain questions. Some of them I don't understand why you would choose not to say, but still you have certain things would be considered an invasion of privacy. Confidential communication, basically saying you're not sitting at a restaurant talking about a client at your facility with a coworker while the parents are right there able to hear that you're talking about their kid. And then there's a big old poop show when that happens because the wrong people have heard that you have breached confidential communication. Things that need to be confidential need to be handled in a consistent confidential manner, you know, through a secure server, through email communication between just the people that need to know, through face-to-face interaction behind a closed door, things like that. Confidential things must be kept confidential. We all know that. Research, that can go a lot of directions as far as a manager. A constant state of research to find the best way to provide what we're providing. If research is being done in our facility, you know, by an outside entity or something like that, we need to make sure that the research is not breaching confidentiality, that it's not invading privacy of our people. It's not cutting down on what we're able to provide to our clientele, things like that. Informed consent. Informed consent is basically we need to be letting people know what to expect, what we're going to be offering. They're basically consenting to what we're offering them after being fully informed of what's happening. That's basically all that informed consent is. We don't want them to consent to something if they haven't been briefed on what we're going to be able to give them. You know, if we have a hippotherapy program or therapeutic riding at a facility where you're working, and you're intending on that being part of a patient's program, before they sign on the dotted line, then they need to know that on Wednesdays is going to be therapeutic riding. You know, you don't want Wednesday to come around and then be like, no, I got kicked by a horse when I was 7 years old. I'm not doing that. They weren't able to give you informed consent because they had not been informed. Something else as a manager, we have to make sure that our employees are competent in what they're doing. That falls on the manager as, you know, the trainer, as the example, as the educator in a lot of cases. It's the manager's responsibility to make sure that the people are in the right place at the right time, doing the right things because we've put them there. We put the right blend of people in the right places, things like that. Equity, people are getting fair treatment at work. They are, your employees are being treated fairly. They're being scheduled on a fair basis. You're not having one person who gets every Saturday off and one person who has to work every weekend. Think that would fly in the workplace? Wouldn't for me. I wouldn't just go with that. You need to be equitable. You don't want to give and this is something I've seen that I want y'all to think of. Once you get up the ladder, wherever you are, and you are assigning things out for employees to do one day, if you have someone that you assign a special project to, let's say, and they do an awesome job on it, and everything was flawless, and you didn't have to worry about a thing. Everybody was bragging on such an awesome event that you put on. Just say it was a health fair, that you wanted to provide, and it went amazing. You had this huge turnout. Everybody was happy. Next time you have a big event, who are you going to, instinctively, who will you want to put in charge of that? The same person who just kicked tail on that one. Don't do it. You talk about running off good people. Before long, that employee is going to say, look what I get for doing a good job. I get all the responsibility and all the big events, and everybody else is just sitting back watching, getting the same pay as me. So, they're going to start slacking off intentionally. They won't do as good a job on purpose the next time because they don't want to get every big event. Or they'll go get another job because they're not being fair. I shouldn't have to do every big event. So that's a good example of equity. And I've seen that in action, and I've seen it run people off, good people. And I've seen people skate by doing little to nothing in comparison, and it's not good management. It's unfair. Another thing that we have to be cognizant of as managers is safety. We need to provide our employees with safety plans, with safety equipment. We also need to make sure that we are providing safe activities, safe practices for our clients that we're working with. So safety that falls in our lap as a manager, as an administrator, because things go up the ladder. When we're talking about torts and we're talking about liability and things like that, they're going to go up. I was on a trip one time. I was in charge of the trip. This was when I was at NMRC. However, I was the driver of the bus that we took. We got back from our trip, our successful trip. I don't even remember where we went. Everybody was assigned to a couple different clients. Each one, we had like a 2-to-1 client to staff ratio. Everything was set up. Everything went well. We got back to the regional center, and when we pulled up, I had to go in and fill out some paperwork in the administration building. So I had another staff go park the vehicle after everybody got off. I had to do something fast when we got back. Long story short, I got a call about an hour later saying that I needed to come back up to the center because they wanted to ask me some questions. And we had one of our clients had basically laid down under one of the back seats in the bus. And it was about like it was last night, probably, cold. And they started looking for him in the cottage after everybody had been returned to the building. So even though I was not on the vehicle, I immediately had to go take care of something. I'd gotten a call and had to go into the administration building to make a phone call, fill out some forms. At that point, I had delegated, all right, you make sure that the bus is parked, y'all walk them back to the cottages, all that stuff. I wasn't there for this to happen. I never went back to the vehicle. A client was left on there for over an hour. It was a pretty big deal. He was fine, but Who's the person that they called? Me. I wasn't anywhere around when that happened. Luckily, I did not get in trouble because of that, but that just goes to show you that when you are the manager, the leader of something, you're the one they're going to want to talk to. And I couldn't even answer half of their questions. You know, I was like, when we got back, I was in admin building filling out a form. So-and-so drove the bus. Nobody got officially written up for it, but it was a situation where had they been left on there, had it not been caught within that hour or so, who knows where that would have, we probably would have been in the newspaper. And for a bad reason. You know, there's good times to be on the news and in the newspaper, and then there's bad times. So you don't want to be on there in one of those bad times. Y'all got any questions or anything on this one? This one was all about doing what we're supposed to do, training our people to follow the code of ethics, follow safety protocols, stay away from these lawsuits and things which are much more rampant than they used to be. You know, we're in a much more litigious society now, far more litigation than there used to be. And it's just the way the world runs. Next time we will, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing my screen and end the video, and we're going to watch a couple of your guys' assignments that you turned in, and we'll talk about them and laugh at each other and have a good time. So let me get this stopped.